Okay, welcome everyone to the information session for prospective applicants for AYO programs in 2027. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're actually coming to you from around the country at the moment. I am on Gadigal land, and I begin by paying my respects to elders past and present. With us, we have four very qualified and experienced panelists to answer all of your questions, all of whom are musicians with different degrees of AYO, life experience. So we have Kimberly Harding, our CEO. We have Warren Lenthal, our Director of Programs. We have Georgia Gamble, who is both an AYO alum and one of our residential coordinators on programs. And we have the wonderful Maggie Wang, who's a current participant, but has been with us since 2022. So with that, I will hand over to Kimberly to begin.
Oh, well, welcome everyone. Just echoing Joanna's lovely warm welcome. So this session is it really is about giving you some insights into how the AYO programs run, but more specifically having a bit of a Q&A around the application process and getting some tips and tricks from the people who run the applications process, some people who have actually been through the applications process, and also who work with us on the actual delivery of the program. So please feel free to drop some of those questions into the Q&A in the chat. Joanna's going to be monitoring them, so she will call out or answer them directly on the chat for you. So couple of things. The session is being recorded so that we can share that with anyone who can't join the session a bit later, or if you'd like to go back and listen to things that you might have missed or get some further details. So let's have a start with having a look at the 2027 programs. So the main programs that we run at AYO starts in January with National Music Camp, which is this awesome 2 weeks in Adelaide, where we have around 250 young people coming from across the country. We come from across the country and New Zealand. This year in 2026, we actually had someone coming from Austria as well. So the only thing that you need to have to be eligible is, first of all, extremely talented and skilled musician, but you also have to be Australian citizen. So wherever you are in the world, you can apply for National Music Camp. You can apply for an AYO, and then you come down to Adelaide in January. Next year, it's great. We have 2 international conductors coming to work with our young people, Amelia Hoving, and we have Alexandre Bloch, who was the chief conductor of the Lyon Symphony Orchestra, and they both regularly perform with the professional orchestras of Australia and across the world. So those are 2 wonderful conductors to work with our young people. We also have AYO Gotto, who is very well known as one of the lead violinists of the ACO. Incredible violinist, incredible pedagogue, just an incredible human being all round. She is wonderful to work with. She loves working with young people, so she's going to be an excellent chamber orchestra director this year. So that's the first one. 2027 National Music Camp, and Warren's going to tell you a little bit more about that a bit later. There are 3 main ensembles: a big symphony, late romantic style mega symphony orchestra, a late classical period size symphony orchestra, and the chamber orchestra. And then there are other exciting programs that also happen at National Music Camp. The next program we have is the AYO flagship. So the flagship orchestra is the one that sits a little bit above National Music Camp. There's about 85 to 90 young musicians who are selected each year, depending on the repertoire and depending on the programs that we put on. They have 2 seasons, one in summer and one in winter. So normally in February and normally in the July school holidays. And those flagship seasons are really fantastic programs. Next year, very exciting, we are working with Umberto Clerici, who is the chief conductor of the QSO, and we are also working with Tiani Liu, one of the world's leading international female conductor from Australia, New Zealand. It's a little bit like the Pavlova conversation. Is she really Australian? Is she really New Zealander? Or is she coming from somewhere else? But we're going to claim her. She is going to work with us in July, and we are performing at the Queensland Performing Arts QPAC, Queensland Performing Arts Centre up in Brisbane in July. So those are the 2 seasons for Flagship Orchestra. And then we have Symphonists. The Symphonist is going to be super exciting in 2027. This is our high school aged ensemble. So it is representing the best young musicians from across the country, all under the age of 18. And I can see that Maggie is smiling a little bit for this one, because I don't know if you're smiling because you're missing out, Maggie, and you're a little bit cranky with me, but Maggie's last year in high school this year, so she won't be eligible for Symphonist next year, which is very sad because we are going international for the first time. We are touring to Singapore. We have a partnership with the Singapore National Youth Orchestra and the Singapore Symphony Orchestra and the Singapore National Conservatorium. So we are going over for our week residency in Singapore. We will be performing our own project under the incredible maestro Christoph Olstadt, who is from Germany and works extensively with the German orchestras and with the German National Youth Orchestra. We are presenting at the Esplanade, which is the leading concert performing venue in Singapore. So we're performing at the Esplanade, and then we will be performing a side-by-side with the Singapore National Youth Orchestra. Exciting, even more exciting for that project is that we're partnering as well with our New Zealand friends, the New Zealand National Youth Orchestra, who will be sending across 8-10 approximately young New Zealand musicians to participate with that program. So we really will be representing the best young musicians from, I guess, ANZAC, from Australia, New Zealand area, and really celebrating our neighbours in South Asia. So those are our main orchestral programs. We're going to have a couple of other programs that are going to be exciting for 2027, which are probably more for the graduates or the people who have been in the AYO for a few years, and that's called Momentum. But we can talk a little bit about that later. Something actually, Maggie, you and I should have a chat with after this call. Yep, brilliant. So a couple of things that I haven't mentioned are some of the non-orchestral programs. So I'm going to hand over to Warren. Warren, can you tell us a little bit more about National Music Camp and some of the other exciting opportunities that we can expect?
Absolutely, Kimberly. So at National Music Camp, in addition to 3 orchestras, which is around 200 young musicians, we provide training opportunities across courses for composition, sound production, media and communication, and orchestral management. So across the 2 weeks of National Music Camp, we essentially recreate the ecosystem of the sort of the arts classical world into our own little bubble. So in the media and communication course, they learn everything from program notes to radio interviews to social media. The composers work with our composer in residence, who next to you is Maria Grenfell. 4 composers are selected to create a workshop and have performed brand new compositions that the orchestral tutors will perform. Then there'll be staff from one of the major orchestras in Australia leading the orchestral management program. That course gives the applicants and the participants a real practical hands-on opportunity to gain experience running orchestral rehearsals, working with the conductors or the musicians. They plan all of the concert performances and deliver those in stage management capacities. And alongside them, the sound production course get a crash course, literally, in all the nuances of recording audio for orchestras and classical music. They record all of the concerts that we run at National Music Camp, which is, I think it's normally about 11 concerts over the 14 or so days. And that includes the 4 big orchestral concerts, which are usually recorded for radio broadcasts.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Warren. The thing that makes National Music Camp really special, besides incredible friendships, incredible musicians, young people, incredible conductors, and this is something that our international friends, when they come over and they think, oh, this is incredible, this is really unique, we need to take this model and apply it elsewhere in the world. We take the pattern on our back and say, yes, we've been doing this since 1948, beat that. But what makes it really special is that all of the teaching staff, the tutors that stay with us over the 2 weeks, are pulled from the professional orchestras around the country. So we have representation from WASO, from SSO, MSO, QSO, Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, from all the leading conservatoriums around the country as well. And then we have the most incredible residential staff, and Georgia can talk to us a little bit about that as well. So it's a really quite an intensive experience, an immersive experience. Maggie, one of the things that I when I first started with AYO is I was wondering, how do you get to, feel about being assigned to a different orchestra? You've got 3 orchestras in the National Music Camp. What are some of the different experiences that you might find in each of the orchestras, and how do you get rostered into that, and you've done it 3 or 4 times now, so you would have some really good insights into this.
Yeah, so definitely all of the different orchestras in National Music Camp offer different experiences. So I've been fortunate enough to be part of all of the orchestras now, as this is my 4th time with NMC, I think. So there's obviously a chamber orchestra, which is a smaller group. And it's only strings, so there's no brass, there's no percussion, no woodwinds, which offers a more intensive and more intimate experience with working with a violinist, a conductor for the orchestra. And for symphony orchestras, which I've been part of the Bishop Orchestra for 2 years now, it's a bigger, more immersive experience with richer textures, obviously with different instruments as well. So yeah, definitely different experiences across all the orchestras.
And you've now worked with 4, so there are 2 cello tutors at each, or 1 cello tutor that you work with, or 2. How many different orchestras have you worked with the tutors at National Music Camp? Can you remember?
How many different tutors did I work with?
Yes, and how many different orchestras from across the country have you worked with now? So you've had Howard Penny from ANAM, you've had...
Yes, I've had my own teacher at the AYO program last year at NMC, which is very special. I've worked with so many different tutors now from all over the country, from orchestras and conservatoriums all over the country, such as MSO, TSO, QSO, WASO, so many different opportunities to work with different professors.
Brilliant. Thanks, Maggie. So when we go to the flagship orchestra, it's a slightly different experience in National Music Camp. So National Music Camp does have a camp feeling, and there's a lot of chamber music that the young people do. There are tutorials, there are masterclasses, there are professional development opportunities. There's outside of the usual music world. There's yoga, there is physio, there's audio or oral health training, lots of different experiences. And one of those experiences, of course, is staying on campus with the rest of the 200 plus participants and looking after their well-being is the residential staff. Now, our residential staff are really extraordinary because they're not only specialists in looking after the well-being and pastoral needs of our young people, they're also extremely professional and high caliber musicians themselves. So they offer musical advice and help with their instruments. Georgia, can you give us a little bit of an insight into your experience as a resi?
Absolutely. So as I came through AYO as a participant myself, I understand how intense and exciting these programs can feel for young musicians, and that perspective has really shaped how I approach residential care alongside the other residential coordinators. So on every program we have at least 2 residential coordinators present, and the biggest thing for us is visibility and approachability. We're not just there if something goes wrong. We make a point of being present in common spaces, at meals, after rehearsals, during downtime, so students know support is accessible and normal. Communication is a huge part of the role. AYO provides us with the detailed medical information before programs begin, and our participant handbook, which you receive also, gives students, families and staff a really clear framework and consistency of expectations.
Thanks, Georgia. really, we're getting that bit of that feedback again. So there we go. Thank you so much, Georgia. The residential staff are really extraordinary, and part of the AYO unique experience and that care, the wraparound care that they provide is really, really invaluable. Their wraparound care is also going to be, or is also applied to all the flagship and the Symphonist programs, which are also residential. So in Symphonist program next year in 2027, we know that it's going to be an interesting program, not only because it's international, but it's also because it's slightly overlapping with the school term. So the pastoral care at Symphonists is slightly different. Normally, we would cram as much musical activity as we possibly can within realms of being safe, of course, for our young people. But because this is also during school term and we want the best of the best, the national representation, we are building in study time and academic time so that they have enough time to decompress, to attend to their musical activities, to take a full immersive Singapore cultural experience as well, but then also make sure that they have time to keep up with their studies, be that online or be that with their peers. So that's going to be interesting for 2027 Symphonists. So if you're applying for that, please reach out to us and we can talk through what that might look like for you. So let's have a talk a little bit about the application process. So Warren, would you mind talking us through just the basics of how this goes about?
Absolutely. So the application process requires you to register on our website. So from the 1st of June, you'll be able to start submitting your application. At the moment, you can pre-register and make sure that you receive any important updates until then. But from the 1st of June, you'll be able to, if you haven't already, create your own account. So the accounts are made for the person who is applying. So if you're a parent and your child is applying, then you should be creating an account for them. And if you have multiple children, then you should that are going to apply, you should create a separate account for each child. So then once you log in, if you navigate into our portal, you will find a button on the 1st of June that will say you can apply by clicking this button. It'll get you to fill out a form, and it'll step you slowly through the process in a nice, convenient manner. So you need to provide some general personnel information, and then it uses some of that information to determine what programs you're eligible for. So you choose which instruments you want to apply on, and using your age, the system will tell you which programs you're eligible for, because we do have a varying age eligibility per program. Then it lets you select which programs you wish to be considered for. We encourage you to apply for all of the programs that you're eligible for. The programs are split up into slightly different application criteria. The National Music Camp and the Symphonist program require submission of what's called the Set A of excerpts, and then the AYO flagship and our other extension programs like the professional immersions require you to submit Set A and Set B. So make sure when you do apply that you read through all of that information, which comes and will be available on the website at that point as well. If you have any questions once you've applied, or you'd like to make changes to your application so that you can submit for flagship, or you've decided not to, please be in contact with us and we can update your application in our system. At that point, you have access to the audition requirements if you're applying for an instrumental position. So most of the instruments require you to prepare orchestral excerpts. This is perhaps different to what people are used to. Orchestral excerpts make up a big portion of the AYO audition process. It's important that you take some time and really sit down with your teacher and learn the context of each audition excerpt. Some of them may look just like a short 8-bar phrase that's not particularly hard to play, but the panel that assess you will be very interested in how you play that phrase or that piece in context of the overall work, and that you can demonstrate an understanding of what else is happening in the orchestra, and that you make decisions about how you perform it based on your knowledge of the piece. So if you're applying just for National Music Camp or Symphonists, you submit just set A. If you're applying for the other programs, you submit set B as well. Now, the information you receive at this point gives you a good list of how to prepare your audition. Some key information that's worth reminding everyone at this point. All the auditions are recorded auditions, so you need to make multiple videos. So we ask you to make multiple videos, one for your excerpts, which should be recorded from the first excerpt through to the last one. You shouldn't make any edits to that video. It should be constant video all the way through. But you are, of course, welcome to take a pause, take a deep breath, play with your instrument, retune, whatever you might need to do in between the excerpts. Then you make a separate video for your own choice work, and you then at the end of the process upload each of those separately to our system. If you're a woodwind player, we strongly encourage you to also submit a auxiliary woodwind audition, which is then recorded as another set of excerpts. There's no own choice requirement for a auxiliary woodwind audition, but you do need to prepare another, I think it's 3 excerpts. So that's if you want to submit an application on piccolo, cor anglais, E flat or bass clarinet or contrabassoon. And we strongly encourage you, if you're a woodwind player, to do that. If you're submitting an application for one of our non-performance courses, so the courses we talked about at National Music Camps, composition, sound production, media and communication, or orchestral management, all of those require you to submit a portfolio. So like with the excerpt, it's really important that you read the information about how to submit that. The attention to detail on that will go a long way to making sure that your application can be assessed to its full standard. If you're applying for the media and communication, sound production, or orchestral management courses, you'll also then be invited to do a short interview that's normally around 10 or 15 minutes. And that's run by generally the mentor that will be leading the course at camp alongside a member of the AYO management team.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Warren. What I was hearing there was that the excerpts and the own choice in the audition are just as important as each other. There's not one that's more important, and that I think some of the first time, I don't know, Maggie, you ever had this question, but with first timers, sometimes there might be an assumption that the own choice is more important and it's going to be worth more than the excerpts, and so they put all their effort into doing, I don't know, Zigeunerweisen on the violin by Sarasate, and they don't really spend a lot of time looking at the excerpts. Is that something that you've experienced or you've heard from some colleagues as well, Maggie or Georgia?
I think it could be a common misconception that your own work is more important. But for an orchestral audition, I think the excerpts are very important for the adjudicator to judge your ability to play the excerpts in context with the whole piece, which is very important. So I think both are, very important, equally important, and the own choice is certainly not more important than the excerpts.
Thanks, Maggie. And Georgia, it must be strange. Actually, we have 2 bassline instruments here. Maggie is a cellist and Georgia is a double bassist. I'm an ex-violinist, so I'm expecting a lot of melody in my excerpts. You're not going to have necessarily melody in your excerpts. So what are some of the things that, as a double bassist, an audition panelist might be looking for in those excerpts?
Maggie certainly nailed it on the head there with the context of the piece. So perhaps we don't have the most iconic line or the melody, but knowing that piece from recordings and what your teacher says, which sometimes takes more than a lesson to really dive into the era of the music and what's going on. Yeah, the sooner you start, the better. Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Georgia. I think we've got a question in our Q&A about ages, and so we might just go over those again. So Warren, would you mind telling us the ages of each program? And then we have a question in the Q&A about if somebody is 12, on March 2027, can they actually apply?
Thanks, Kimberly. So the age eligibility across our programs. So for the Symphonist program, or for all of the programs, the age eligibility uses the 1st of January as our point, and that allows everyone over the course of their potential AYO journey to have the same number of opportunities to apply for each program. So for Symphonists, the requirement is 12 at the 1st of January up to 17. For National Music Camp in the orchestral program, the age is 14 to 22. If you're applying for the non-performance courses at National Music Camp, it does vary a little bit by program to program. So you should check the website to check the specific program. But the youngest we take in those programs is 16 and the oldest is 30. And then for the flagship and the immersion programs, the requirement is just that you're 25 or under. So we do consider people that are younger than the other programs for the flagship. And we have before had 12-year-olds apply and successfully participate in that program. If you're younger than that, you may encounter some issues with our system trying to apply. So just please be in touch with the office and we can assist you with that.
Thanks, Warren. We have had 12-year-olds on our flagship, as Warren has just mentioned. But our concern with AYO, of course, is the well-being of the young people and whether they are emotionally, not just musically, but emotionally and socially ready for that kind of intensive experience. So with both of those in recent history, with both of those cases, there was a lot of conversation between the AYO staff and team and that young person's parents and caregivers to make sure, and their teacher, to make sure that this was the right step at this time in their journey. So thank you for that, Warren. I also noticed that there was a question in there about the kind of musical standards that we would recommend, which is all on our website as well, because the standards, of course, are different for various instruments. So if you can go and have a look on the website, if that's a question that you are asking, Joanna has put it into the chat, so that's wonderful. I also noticed that I also heard that all of the excerpts or all of the auditions are digital, and that the takeaway there is there's one video for the excerpts, there's one video for your own choice, and there's no editing in between, there's no chopping and changing. So as much as possible, the video is supposed to be as close to a live experience of an audition as possible. That doesn't mean to say, of course, that you can't redo your video as many times as you want, but actually what the audition panelists, and we'll talk about who those panelists are in a second, what they're looking for is not perfection. They're not looking for perfection. They're not looking for technical brilliance. Well, they are looking for brilliance. They're not looking for technical perfection. They're looking for musical fundamentals. They're looking at, as Georgia and Maggie were saying, context, awareness of context. They're looking at rhythm. Rhythm's super important. Intonation. They're looking at phrasing. They're looking at tone quality. So talking about sound and tone quality, it's really important that you have a good caliber digital recording device. Most of the phones nowadays are pretty good, and they've got good microphones, they've got good cameras, but just making sure that you're in the right acoustic, the acoustic that's going to best suit your instrument, best suit your excerpts is really good. It's really good advice. If you have access to a USB Yeti microphone or another type of microphone that gives you just a little bit of an extra microphone quality, then that's something that we would suggest as well. But please do not get too stressed about getting the perfect video. Maybe do it once or twice, 1 week, give it a break, come back and do it again a little bit later. Please, we don't think that getting into a cycle of doing again and take for hours and hours and hours is actually very valuable. That's not what the auditioners or the panelists are looking for, and that's only going to cause you stress and harm along the way. So our panelists, actually I'll stop there for a second. Is there any advice, Maggie, Warren, or Georgia, I might go with Maggie first and Warren and then Georgia, that you would give to somebody who is perhaps recording their audition for the first time?
Definitely. So one of my main advice would be before the actual recording, to do practice recordings of your excerpts and your own piece, and kind of be like your own teacher to like really like look at your recording and take some notes about what you could improve, what you liked, what you didn't like in that recording. And that really saves you from a lot of stress when you're doing your actual recording to fix so many things at once. So that definitely helped me to do practice recordings in the days leading up to, for example, when you're planning to record, and kind of being your own teacher. And another piece of advice I would give is similar to what I was talking about before, like really understanding the context of the piece. And to do that, I would encourage listening to the whole work and doing some mental practice by either looking at the score or listening to a recording of the piece and listening to what's around it, listening to your role in the excerpt. For example, are you the accompaniment? Are you the secondary melody? Are you the main melody in that excerpt? So understanding your role in your excerpt would really shape some of the music choices that you make regarding how you play it.
Warren, any tips?
Yeah, I'll jump in. You commented before making sure that whilst you can record as many times as you want before you choose to submit, it's often been recommended by previous participants that they just aiming to do 3 recordings on one day and then choosing the best one is the best way to go about it. The most important thing um, I would suggest, though, is that you need to make sure you spent the time checking that the device you're using, and mobile phones are generally really suitable these days, that it's set up well so that the panel can see you in the video clearly, that also the noise that your instrument makes is both clearly heard, but also not distorting at any point. These are things that just taking a little bit of time and checking all of it ensures that what you submit can be assessed to the highest or the best ability, and best reflects the standard that you're at. Yeah.
Thanks, Warren. What about you, Georgia?
I think back to a bit of a faux pas I made in my later years. I actually purchased a video camera for my auditions and an attachable microphone. And I remember I mustn't have clicked the microphone on at some point. So I remember looking back at the footage and thinking, wow, I look great. And then very shortly after realizing there was no sound. And of course, that's the one I thought I did the best in. But no, look, I think it's all been said. But really, one of the greatest skills that AYO can teach you is how to record an audition and how to listen and acknowledge your video footage. So definitely have that spot set up at home or in your music room where every now and then you just get that video camera out for the sake of it. Obviously, applications are opening on June 1st, so there is nothing stopping a participant from giving it a good old try once a week up until the due date. I think a little bit of familiarity and getting into the zone so it's less nervous or less foreign is what will help you with your audition success.
Thanks so much, Georgia. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because some people get super nervous when they perform on stage in front of an audience, but other people get more nervous when they're performing in front of a camera to an empty room. It's a weird psychosis. So Maggie obviously doesn't feel this is the case. She's perfectly at home doing digital auditions and very, very well versed with this process at this point. And it's interesting to note that a lot of the professional orchestras and a lot of the conservatoriums around the world are using digital auditions. So this is a really good life skill as a musician to become familiar with and to practice. So now our panelists, the panelists themselves are chosen. Generally there are 2 per instrument. There might be 1 if it's a very, very small instrument, or there might be 4 if it's a very I won't say large instrument, I say numerous instrument. So we do have a selection of panelists, and what we like to do is try and have representation from domestic, as in Australian-based professional musicians. They are all from professional orchestras or from professional ensembles. And we have a selection of international professional musicians as well. So the great thing about AYO, because we're going into nearly our 80th year, we are nearly 80 years young, is that we have a huge network of Australian musicians across the world that we can call on to help us with our training programs. and with our mentoring and our auditioning. It's one of the great things about becoming part of the AYO families, because then you are connected to all of that network, and you can find advice and make those conversations happen with people from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. So our panelists, sometimes you might find that one of the panelists may be your teacher. So this is why it's really important that we have all of the correct information on your audition form. Maggie has just mentioned that her teacher was one of her tutors at National Music Camp. So that was a lovely surprise. Well, actually, not so much a surprise, you knew beforehand because Howard told you. Warren, would you give us a little bit of insight of what happens if the teacher is actually the panelists?
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. So, as you touched on before, we endeavour to have at least two people assess every audition, and we collect all the information from applicants to try and make informed decisions about who we invite to assess each year, to avoid as much as possible having teachers on panels. If we do end up with a student that has applied and their teacher is one of our panelists for the year, that teacher doesn't actually get involved in the assessment of their audition at all. And we bring in an additional panelist who will assess that person in addition to the other panelists, and a range of other auditions so that they can assist in placing each of the applicants in an appropriate spot.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Warren. So if you have any questions, that's the end of our kind of section on applications and auditions. If you have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A. I can see that Joanna has been busily answering those questions for us, but if there are further questions, please let us know. And of course, you're more than welcome to reach out to us after the session at the info at email or on the phone, and we'll help with your questions. So I thought we'd just spend a couple of minutes before we head off to describe or to talk about what life is like on an AYO program, because they are all residential programs, even if, let's say, our last flagship orchestra was in Melbourne. And Maggie is from Melbourne. Maggie could have, possibly her parents would have said, can you stay at home please and you can do some more study, but no, all AYO programs are residential programs, so that's part of the fun, that's part of the excitement, it's part of the experience as well. They all work and live together while they're on an AYO program. So Maggie, can you tell us a little bit, can you remember what your first day on your first AYO program was like? Do you remember at all, or is it all just becoming one big AYO memory?
Thanks, Kimberly. I think, yeah, I remember what my first day was like because it was so memorable. Because, yeah, the first program that I ever did for AYO was the 2022 Young Symphonist program. And it was close to home. It was in Ballarat in Victoria. And I remember the first day, I had so much like nervous energy in me, but I was also really excited to meet everyone because my first program, I didn't know a single person. But after the program, I ended up making so many lifelong friends that to this day, I'm still in contact with them. So the first day usually looks like musicians coming in from everywhere from over the country and arriving either on bus or plane, and there's like a briefing for under 18s and a briefing for the whole camp or the whole program. Everyone's involved. And that just gives some information about what the program will be like, some like guidelines, some rules and stuff. And there's also the first rehearsal in the evening usually, which is very, very exciting as all the practice at home finally comes together in the first rehearsal. And it's just such a great opportunity to meet all those friends that you've previously met from the other programs, but also to meet new musicians and make new friends from all over the country. It's just so special.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Maggie. So you mentioned there that people come from across the country by bus, actually, I don't think you mentioned bus, you mentioned plane. You mentioned plane and train. Warren, can you talk to us a little bit about the kind of logistics and travel? How does it work with the various programs?
Yeah, so for National Music Camp, participants are required to make their own way to Adelaide and back again. If they don't already live in Adelaide, they have to leave at the end. We do, though, meet everyone at the airport if they choose to fly, and we transfer them on buses to the program locations. So if you're arriving for your first day on an AYO program, there'll be a staff member ready to meet you at the luggage carousel at the airport, and guide you as to where you need to go from that point on. Uh, Usually for the Symphonist program, participants are also required to make their own travel arrangements. In 2027, we're flying everyone to Singapore, so it's not practical for us to expect you to make your own travel. So that will be part of the program fee for next year's program. For the Set B more advanced programs, the flagship and the immersion activities, as part of the program fee, AYO arranges the travel that may be required for you to attend that program and any program travel within the program. For instance, the upcoming flagship season in July, we'll be spending time in Sydney and then also making a trip to Darwin mid-program to do a performance there. So all of that's covered within the fee that you pay to be involved.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Warren. So that's one thing that we possibly don't advertise as much is that the AYO programs, beside the incredible experience of being part of the national flagship or the National Music Camp or the Symphonists program, is actually one of the most cost-effective programs as well, and it's heavily sponsored and heavily supported by philanthropic and by government support, which means that hopefully the best young musicians from Australia are represented and given this opportunity. On top of that, if there is further financial assistance required on top of those fees, that there is a scholarship program, or it's called a financial assistance program, that participants can apply for, and that can help with those fees. Warren, can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how you apply?
Yeah, so at the start of October, we make offers for the programs, and successful applicants, upon accepting a position in a program, are invited to apply for financial assistance. It requires completing a form that allows us to means test everyone that applies for financial assistance. And then through that program, we do our best to assist with both the cost of program fees, and for those programs where own travel is required to be arranged, to also try and support participants that have identified a need for assistance with some of the costs involved in making that travel arrangement themselves.
Brilliant. Thanks, Warren. So we were talking about the travel for programs. Now, if I was a first-time participant, I would want to know about the sleeping arrangements and the bedrooms. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And maybe Georgia can also weigh in on what is it like, what does that look like? Because we've all been on school camps before, and perhaps we've been on band camps before. AY is slightly different. Warren?
Yeah, and it does vary a little by program. Usually the Symphonist program is based at a boarding school. So we use their boarding school facilities, which can vary from school to school. But generally it involves everyone receiving their own bedroom, sometimes a shared bedroom, and then more communal bathroom facilities. Next year, when the Symphonists go to Singapore, we'll be using twin hotel rooms for the orchestra. So the participants will be assigned a room with one of their colleagues in the orchestra, and that'll be their space for the week. National Music Camp, our biggest program, we use generally university college style accommodation, which, like a boarding house, generally allows everyone an individual bedroom so that they have their own space for the 2 weeks that they're there. And then depending on the college or the building within the college that you might be assigned, you'd share a bathroom either with a small group of people or with people that are, say, on the floor of the building that you're based in. There's normally laundry facilities, some small kitchenettes around as well. Whilst those programs are fully catered, sometimes people like to be able to access a kitchen for various reasons. and especially for National Music Camp, it runs for such a long time. And over the peak of summer, washing some clothes in the middle is often important for everyone's well-being, not just yours, but those that might have to sit around you in rehearsals. For the flagship orchestra, sometimes we use university college accommodation, but more often we house the musicians in either a hotel, if it's for a short stay, or if it's for a longer stay, we often use serviced apartments. So in this type of program, the expectation on the behavior of everyone is increased as we run that program, and it tries to replicate the professional environment at a higher standard. So we put a lot of trust in the participants and place them in these, I guess, nicer accommodations. In a flagship season, we might cater some meals, but we generally don't cater the full program. And instead, we offer a per diem when we don't cater meals, and that allows the musicians the opportunity to use facilities that they might have in a service department with their other colleagues to make their own meals and try and live a fairly sort of normal life, but away from home over that period. But we do have the resis generally at all of these programs, and they're always there to support especially younger participants that might be doing their first program or their first program living in that sort of environment.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Warren. And that's a really good question about some of the under 18s who might be for the first time living in a situation or a week residential program, which is requiring quite a lot of trust, quite a lot of maturity. And they're in a hotel, they're having to go to rehearsals every day, quite intense rehearsals as well, maybe up to 3 rehearsals in one day. It might be a tutti, a sectional, and then another tutti rehearsal again. So I think one of the things that musicians find, well, new participants to AYO programs find surprising is the physical and mental load of doing such an intensive program over the week. National Music Camp's 2 weeks. It's always a very interesting rehearsal, the first rehearsal of the second week. Because, Maggie, have you seen this happen before? The first week, everyone's very prepared with their repertoire. The second week's repertoire, maybe slightly less so. And after a whole week of intense rehearsals, there's a little bit of fatigue that has to be pushed through. So, Georgia, can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that we do to ensure that the under 18s are not only safe, but they're supported in that kind of environment?
Absolutely. So we are very conscious that on residential and touring programs, students are often away from home for the first time in high pressure environments. Our role is balancing well-being with independence. So we help them manage rehearsal intensity, social dynamics, homesickness, fatigue and health, as well as learning how to live with that many other musicians. But one of the things we particularly do for our under 18s is that we ask them to sign in of a night time. So call it a curfew if you would like, but we have a recommended bedtime or a recommended back on campus or at accommodation so that they can spend the time together under supervision until they retire to their rooms of an evening. AYO does designate free time for students to go out and about and explore, but we definitely actually like to keep tabs on them. Perhaps they're going to the beach today, or maybe it's bowling. I'm not saying I don't like the rock climbing idea, but we are also aware that no injuries are ideal on a musical program.
No, I have my list of blacklist activities, Georgia. Rock climbing, ice skating is now on that blacklist. And anything with a ball, quite frankly, anything with a basketball or a cricket ball. Wonderful. All right, well, I think we've covered most of our questions and most of our topics of conversation. There are a couple of questions here that I can see in the chat about kind of the standard of auditions, the type of competition that you might expect at an AYO to get into an AYO program. Can I say, and I'll probably put through this to the panel as well, it's actually quite rare to get into an AYO program the first time you audition. Okay, it is quite rare to do so. The standard is extraordinarily high. Even if you are an instrument that is a very special double reed instrument, perhaps, and is in high demand, perhaps at your school, or is in high demand at your state youth orchestra. It's also in high demand at AYO, and the standard is going to be extremely high. So one of the things we recommend is to be kind to yourself, to prepare well for the auditions, and be kind to yourself even if you don't get in the first time. Because it is, as I said before, quite rare to do so, to get into the first time. But once you do make it into AYO, the learnings, if you can learn from your audition, you can learn from the audition process, get some feedback from your teacher, and perhaps get some feedback from some other, some colleagues, from other teachers as well. Hopefully the experience becomes one that's a learning and development experience, and you really enjoy engaging with AYO in the programs. Georgia, Maggie, Warren, did anyone want to maybe comment on standard or audition practices or expectations?
I'll just jump in. I think it's worth noting that we have over 1,000 people apply each year for AYO programs, so there is a lot of competition, especially if you play an instrument that isn't required in great numbers in an orchestra, like a tuba. The nature of some of our programs means that it's possible that the one really good 17-year-old tuba player might pip you for every program in that year, and it's not a reflection on your ability or your standard, because the outcome and the offers that we make for programs are considering everyone that has applied. So you shouldn't be disheartened. Likewise, we've received lots of flute applicants. Most programs, there's only 2 or 3 positions available on that instrument. So lots of competition, and it's worth doing the audition and using that as a training activity alongside everything else that you do with your teacher, regardless of if you get in or not.
Thanks so much, Warren. And I think we mentioned, I don't think we did mention, but as part of the application process, or the offers, the letter of offers, there is also those who get an immediate offer, position of offer, and then those who will get a reserve offer or a declined offer. So reserve offers are really great. You should be very, very, very proud of getting a reserve offer as well. And quite often the people who are listed on the reserve list do get called up and do end up participating in the program. Now, I see there was a question there from one attendee asking if they're in Year 12 and they get in and they have to pull out what's the process, and that actually is it's a really good question, and we have some more information on the website, and we can talk to you a little bit about that individually, or you can have a look at the information on the website. But sometimes that happens, and it might not just be for Year 12, it might be an injury, it might be something that's come up with the family and you can't attend that program anymore. There's just some protocols and timelines for when you can withdraw from a program, but that does happen, and that's why we have a reserve list. There was another question on there about how many positions are offered. Now, that's a tricky question, and I'm trying not to prevaricate, but the number of positions that we offer depends on the program each year and depends on the repertoire each year. But generally speaking, the symphonist will be I'm going to say a triple wind orchestra, but Warren's going to correct me. How many positions are going to be in the orchestra that we take to Singapore, Warren?
So the symphonist orchestra, it varies year on year, but it's between 60 and 70 participants involved in that orchestra. The flagship orchestra, this year we're doing a smaller Beethoven program for our winter season, but it commonly goes up to 90 plus musicians and gets quite large. As I touched on earlier, there's normally around 200 orchestral participants at National Music Camp, and then there's another 20 or so participants that do the non-performance programs.
Brilliant, thanks so much. And one last question. We didn't mention where we are going in 2027 besides Singapore, because I just was so fixated on Singapore. Warren, can you just go over in chronological order what are the actual cities that we are performing in 27 that we've got confirmed?
Yeah, so if you're involved in an AYO program next year, you could end up in Adelaide for National Music Camp. The flagship orchestra will start its year in Sydney, and we plan to also go to Canberra as part of that season. And then in July, we'll be taking the flagship orchestra up to Brisbane for our winter season.
So mostly the East Coast and Singapore, if that makes sense. So, oh, well, Adelaide's not really East Coast. Anyway, if you have any further questions, please pop them in the chat or reach out to us. I believe that brings us to the end of our Q&A. I'd like to thank Maggie and Georgia for their time. Thank you so much. We really look forward to seeing both of you at the next program that we see you at. Georgia down in Adelaide, Maggie down in Melbourne. And Maggie, all the best with your exams at the end of this year. Well, not the end of this year, coming up shortly in next term. So really wishing you all the best. Warren, thank you so much for your time as well. If you have any questions, the contact details are there on the screen, info@ayo.com.au. We also have the 1300 number. Key dates, 1st of June are when applications open. That's when the excerpts will be all online. You can register, you can pay as soon as 1st of June open. But you must pay, or you must close the registration by the 3rd of August. So that's the important date. Okay. After that, there are a few extra dates that you will be walked through when you go online and make your registration on the portal. That tells you when you have to submit your video. But those are the important dates. 1st of June, applications open. 3rd of August, registrations close. Good luck, everyone. We hope to see you in an AYO program soon. All the best. Good night.